Because of their doubts, several black ministers consulted with Malcolm X about Alinsky.
Malcolm told a group of us, said, well, the only thing that I can say that he knows more about organizing than any person that I know, quote unquote.
When Alinsky finally arrived in Rochester, he was immediately accused of creating hostility between blacks and whites.
Creating tensions? What tensions have we created? We haven't even come into the community. I've only been in Rochester for 5 hours, and all of a sudden there are tensions around. Well, I'll tell you, you do have tensions, but you refuse to look at them. What is happening now is that as a consequence of this invitation, a hidden infection is being brought out into the open.
Alinsky came in and he hit the town like dynamite. This is a southern plantation translated north. So everybody's expecting shootouts, and I have to try to build an organization.
Ed Chambers was assigned by Alinsky to be the lead organizer. Chambers knew he had to get the organization up and running before another hot summer arrived.
And then we got beautiful editorials because we called it Fight. Editorials saying, why didn't you call it Life or Light or Peace? Something, you know, non-confrontational. And so it was Fight. And it was Fight from that day on, and it was a fight.
Now everybody understands what white power is because they own the banks. But earlier in the 1960s, there emerged a new order on the stage. The order of black power. And you spell black power in Rochester with capital letters, F-I-G-H-T.
The main issue that our folk were asking for at the time was work. You know, and our cry was that people didn't have a right to welfare, but they had a right to a job. That was our argument then. Kodak had the key. If you're going to move, you got to move Eastman.
Eastman Kodak Company was Rochester's biggest employer, with over 40,000 workers in the mid-1960s. Now, as in Back of the Yard some 25 years earlier, an Alinsky organization would take on corporate power. In their first meeting with Kodak, Fight proposed a job training program for 600 unemployed community members.
The issue that we are cutting, and which Eastman Kodak's allies have cut, as to whether or not a corporation has a responsibility to the local community as well as to its stockholders, whether it has a social responsibility outside of a financial responsibility, has to be resolved, and we propose to resolve it.
Over time, Fight built enough power to force Kodak's negotiator to sign an employment agreement, but apparently without the full backing of Kodak's chairman.
And they worked out an agreement 3 days before Christmas and signed it. And it lasted, I think that happened in the morning, and I think it lasted till 10 o'clock that night.
That was when they did have real leverage on us then, because that was a pretty serious thing to do, to renege on an agreement that somebody within the company had made.
You could not describe the feeling of despondency, because now we've announced this to our people, and the first thing came to my mind was a trick. I said, you know, they didn't intend to do it to begin with. I said this was a delay tactic.
In response, Alinsky and Fight leaders devised an ingenious plan. They would buy Kodak stock, control other stock by proxy from sympathetic shareholders, and then pressure the company at its shareholders' meeting.
Somehow Alinsky acquired a few shares, and he kept making a big case that he was going to be at the annual meeting and was going to make a big issue there.
As he traveled around, he started pushing that don't give us your resolutions, don't give us your nice words of encouragement, give us your stocks, and we'll vote them.
Alinsky was now in top form. At a press conference he cracked, The only contribution Eastman Kodak has made to race relations was the invention of color film. On April 25th, Kodak held its shareholders meeting in Flemington, New Jersey. Fight bussed in hundreds of its members from Rochester to protest Kodak's broken promises.
We went into the stock meeting, and people were calling us niggers and get out of here, you're not allowed here. Walked in because we were stockholders. And Bond was up, Chairman Bond, and I stood up and asked the question. I said, are you going to honor the agreement? That was the deal.
Minister Florence, you'll have to wait till it's that part of the agenda, you know, which is way down. And Mr. Chairman, we give you 1 hour to agree or not agree to honor the agreement you signed. And 10 jumped up, Saul and I, and we walked out. Cat called again down the aisles. And all the press and television came out. So then, after an hour, we walked back in. What is your answer? What is your answer? Excuse me, what is your answer? We demand to know. The answer is no. Then it's going to be a long, hot summer.
But Fight had built an organization capable of sustaining a long battle. And by creating allies in the middle class through Alinsky's stock proxy strategy, they eventually forced Kodak back to the bargaining table.
We have a new relationship. We have understanding. And you know, I just have to say it. We have an agreement.
Alinsky may have been a necessary evil. One would hope that you could accomplish all the good things we did without that evil, but I'm not sure we could have.
I would not have done what I did, I think, if it was not for meeting Saul and going through that experience. Nothing, I think, ever impacted my life as much as that.
By the late 1960s, Saul Alinsky had become something of a folk hero to many college campus activists. He challenged them to move from demonstrating in the streets to organizing people in their communities.
But one of the major theories of social change is that you build up counter-institutions to what is, and that a new society emerges.
All right,
How the hell did Christianity develop? What's the development of capitalism? It's the same thing.
You don't have a tougher, harder, more realistic operator than Paul in organizing Christianity. If Paul hadn't come around to organize a Christian church, Christ would have been another guy hanging on a cross.
Always the organizers.
We're talking about revolution, not revelation, Alinsky said in his book, Rules for Radicals. There are no rules for revolution, but there are rules for radicals who want to change the world. And to teach those rules, Alinsky and Ed Chambers set up a training institute for organizers in 1969.
They're going to be taught how to organize. They're going to be taught to be realistic, tough organizers. They're going to be...
By the early 70s, Alinsky concluded that America's poor would need to ally themselves with the middle class. If we fail to communicate with the middle class, he wrote, if we fail to form alliances with them, they will move to the right. Maybe they will anyway, but let's not let that happen by default. But Alinsky never got the chance to organize the middle class. On June 12, 1972, he died suddenly of a heart attack on a street corner in Carmel, California. He was 63 years old. By the time of Alinsky's death, his training institute had become the classroom for many social activists across the country.
The three principal people who came out of Alinsky's earlier work, Tom Gaudette, Ed Chambers, Fred Ross, then themselves have mentored generations of new organizers. So there's not any organizing, community organizing, that you can look at in the country today that probably can't be traced back to one of these three people.